Wow, you've really outdone yourself this time, sending us this stack of material about the 1936 Berlin Olympics. We've got excerpts from history books, details on how Berlin won the bid, and even a breakdown of all the venues. But it's clear this is about way more than just sports, right?
Oh, absolutely. The thing is, these games were just completely intertwined with the Nazi regime's propaganda machine and, all the global tensions at the time. It's fascinating, really. We're going to uncover some surprising facts, I think. And we'll see how the Olympics basically became the stage, not just for athletic achievements, but also for all this, well, political maneuvering.
Okay, so let's set the scene then. We're talking Summer Olympics, right? Held in Berlin, August 1st to the 16th, 1936. Right, smack dab in the middle of Hitler's Germany. But here's a little something that might surprise you. These were actually the first televised Olympics, broadcasting to 41 countries. Can you imagine?
Yeah, that's a landmark moment in media history, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, just think about it. For the Nazi regime, it was this incredibly powerful propaganda tool. They could project their ideology to a global audience, And they
No.
definitely spared no expense in crafting their image, I'll tell you.
No.
Like, they even commissioned Leni Riefenstahl, the filmmaker, to direct this film, Olympia, which, by the way, cost a whopping $7 million in 1936.
$7 million. That's a fortune. So this wasn't just about athletic competition, was it? It was about, well, shaping global perception.
Exactly. But before we get into all that, let's rewind a bit because, Berlin winning the bid to host the games, that wasn't some foregone conclusion.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, there were other contenders, of course. Barcelona was actually the main competitor.
So how did Berlin end up as the host city then? Was it rigged from the start or something?
Well, no, not exactly. The International Olympic Committee, the IOC, they held a vote and Berlin won fair and square. But here's where it gets interesting. That vote happened in 1931. That's before Hitler came to power.
Oh, wow, I see. It makes you wonder, like, how different things could have been.
Oh, yeah, it's a real what-if moment in history for sure. But, even though they secured the bid before the Nazis took over, once they were in power, Hitler saw those games as this, like, golden opportunity, to promote his regime and all that ideology.
Yeah, and they definitely weren't subtle about it
Oh,
either.
no, no, not at all. The Nazi Party paper, Volkischer Beobachter, they explicitly stated that Jews should be excluded from the games altogether.
It's chilling to see how openly they just, express their anti-Semitism. So they actually tried to ban Jewish athletes.
Well, yeah, they did, but there was this huge international pressure, with some countries even threatening to boycott if Jewish athletes were excluded. Hitler, being, always keen on maintaining a certain image on the world stage, he had to make a decision, a calculated one. So he allowed a handful of Jewish and black athletes to participate, just enough to sort of quell some of that outcry, I guess.
So basically a strategic move disguised as a concession. What about the athletes who weren't so lucky?
Well, they faced a very different reality, sadly. I mean, the Nazis, they systematically excluded most Jewish athletes from participating. A lot of them were barred from the German team outright, and others were pressured to withdraw or faced other forms of, well, intimidation, you could say.
Do we have any examples of that?
Sadly, yes. Like there was Lily Hennock. She was this phenomenal shot putter and discus thrower. She held multiple world records and was a 10-time German national champion. But, because she was Jewish, she was denied her chance to even compete. And then there's Gretel Bergman, top high jumper. Initially, she was allowed back on the team only to be abruptly suspended again, just days after setting a national record. It's just.
It breaks your heart to think about all that talent and potential just stifled by prejudice. It's one thing to have ideological differences, but to rob someone of their Olympic dream because of their religion, that's just... And then, amidst all this, you have this incredible story of Jesse Owens.
Yeah, Jesse Owens. His performance at those games, it was a direct challenge to the Nazi ideology of Aryan supremacy, He won 4 gold medals, became this global symbol of athletic excellence, a powerful reminder that talent and determination, they transcend race.
It's a story that still resonates today, I think, just
Yeah.
reminding us of the power of individual achievement,
Yeah.
to challenge prejudice and, well, inspire change.
Right.
But it wasn't just about Owens, right?
Right. The Nazis, their attempts to, well, control the narrative, they were kind of undermined by a number of other remarkable performances. Like John Woodruff, the African-American runner. He won the 800-meter race. In such a dramatic fashion, he got boxed in and had to slow down mid-race, almost to a jog, but then he burst from behind and won the gold.
That's incredible. Must have been a huge upset for the Germans.
Oh, it was. And then the U.S. rowing team. They also dealt a symbolic blow, you could say, to that Nazi narrative. They beat the Germans in the eight-man race, and get this, with Hitler himself watching from the stands.
Wow, it sounds like those games were just this powder keg of political and social tensions. I mean, what was the global reaction to holding the Olympics in Nazi Germany anyway?
Well, the decision to hold the games in Berlin, it was incredibly controversial, of course, and sparked these heated debates around the world about boycotting the whole event. A lot of countries were involved, like the UK, France, Sweden, and especially the US.
Yeah, I can imagine the dilemma weighing the importance of the athletic competition against, well, the moral implications of supporting a regime like Nazi Germany.
Exactly. And in the US, the debate was particularly intense. You had prominent figures on both sides of the issue. Avery Brundage, he was this powerful figure in the American Olympic movement. He was staunchly against a boycott. He argued that, and this is a famous quote, that politics has no place in sport.
I see. But, I mean, not everyone agreed with it,
Yeah,
right?
of course not. You had people like Judge Jeremiah Mahoney. He was very vocal in advocating for the boycott. He saw any participation in the games as basically like a tacit endorsement of the Nazi regime. He believed sending American athletes to Berlin would be a betrayal of American values and, just a dangerous legitimization of Hitler's government.
So a clash of ideologies then. Brundage emphasizing the purity of sport versus Mahoney seeing the games as inherently intertwined with, well, the political realities of the host country.
That's a great way to put it. And this debate wasn't just confined to, politicians and sports officials. It extended into the African American community as well. Some saw participation as a way to challenge the Nazi ideology head on, while others felt it was collaborating with a racist regime.
Such a complex and emotionally charged debate. So what was the outcome? Did those boycott efforts succeed?
Well, despite all those passionate arguments for a boycott, Brundage's influence ended up winning out, and the U.S. sent a team to Berlin.
What a pivotal decision. It makes you think about all the ripple effects of that choice, both for the athletes themselves and for the global perception of the Nazi regime. But before we go into that, let's explore some of the fascinating details surrounding the games themselves. I mean, beyond the main events and the political controversies, what else was unique about the 1936 Olympics?
Well, for one, these games marked the first time a woman won a gold medal in track and field after surviving a plane crash. Her name was Betty Robinson, and she'd already made history at the 1928 Amsterdam Olympics as the first woman ever awarded an Olympic gold medal for track and field. She won the 100-meter sprint.
Wait, so she was already an Olympic champion. What was the plane crash about?
It was this horrific accident back in 1931. Betty was severely injured, found unconscious in the wreckage. They actually thought she was dead at first and took her to a funeral home.
Oh my gosh, that's terrifying. So she wasn't dead.
Thankfully, no. They discovered she was alive, but in a coma. She eventually recovered, but it was a long, arduous journey back to health. Took her months to learn how to walk again and years to regain her strength and speed.
That's incredible. So she must have missed the 1932 Olympics then, right?
She did, but that didn't stop her. She was determined to make a comeback, and, well, she did. At the 36 Berlin Olympics, she competed as part of the U.S. women's 4x100-meter relay team, and they won the gold medal.
Talk about a comeback story. What an inspiring testament to her resilience. And speaking of inspiring stories, the Indian field hockey team also had a remarkable run at those games. They defeated Germany 8-1 in the final to win their third consecutive Olympic gold medal.
Their victory was particularly poignant, I think, given the political climate and all that Nazi emphasis on Aryan supremacy. But interestingly enough, there wasn't any controversy surrounding India's victory. That's because the Nazi ideology actually considered Indians to be part of the Aryan race.
Huh. That's a fascinating glimpse into, the complexities and inconsistencies of these Nazi racial theories. But beyond all the athletic achievements and the political undercurrents, what was the overall atmosphere actually like at those games?
Well, accounts from those who attended, they paint this picture of a city totally transformed. I mean, Berlin was decked out in Nazi flags and banners. The streets were just packed with crowds, eager to witness this, global spectacle.
Yeah, I bet it felt both exhilarating and, well, a bit unsettling to be surrounded by such overt displays of Nazi ideology. Did anyone dare to speak out against the regime during the games?
I mean, open dissent was incredibly risky, but there are these subtle acts of resistance. The Turkish athletes, Halit Şambel and Suat Fegiryani, they were the first Turkish and Muslim women to ever compete in the Olympics, and they refused to meet Hitler.
Wow. That's a powerful statement. Why did they refuse?
They were just disgusted by his treatment of Jews, and they didn't want to shake his hand. A small gesture, but still significant, I think.
It's amazing how, even when faced with such overwhelming power, people find ways to express their opposition.
It really is. Those small acts of resistance, combined with all the athletic achievements we've talked about, they help to kind of chip away at that, carefully constructed facade that the Nazis had built.
Yeah. We've covered a lot of ground already in this first part of our deep dive. From the political stuff behind the games to those individual stories, the triumphs, the tragedies, it's pretty clear that the 1936 Berlin Olympics were way more than just a sporting event. They were a stage for propaganda, a battleground for ideological supremacy, and, well, really a testament to the human spirit's ability to persevere even in the darkest of times.
It's really something to think about. The weight of those decisions, made by countries to participate or boycott, just immense. But I mean, these weren't just decisions happening in some, government building. They were happening within communities, families, even among the athletes themselves.
That's true. For Jewish athletes especially, the dilemma of competing in games hosted by, well, a regime that so openly targeted them, that must have been incredibly difficult.
Oh, it was a total moral minefield, for sure. No easy answers. Some athletes took a stand, though, like that French fencer, Albert Wolff. He famously said, "I cannot participate in anything sponsored by Adolf Hitler, even for France." And he boycotted.
Wow, what a statement. And this wasn't just individual athletes either, right? Wasn't there a whole alternative Olympics in the works?
Yes. The People's Olympiad. It was being organized in Barcelona as this direct counter to the Berlin Games. Think about that. Athletes from 49 countries had registered to compete.
That's incredible. What a bold statement of defiance against, well, everything that was happening in Berlin. So what happened to it?
Well, it was canceled, unfortunately. Just one day before it was supposed to start, the Spanish Civil War broke out.
Oh, wow. What a tragic turn of events. So even though the boycotts didn't stop the games in Berlin, they definitely exposed all those anxieties and divisions surrounding them.
Oh, without a doubt. And those tensions, they kind of permeated the whole atmosphere of the games, both on and off the field. But we can't let all the political drama overshadow the incredible athletic achievements, right?
Right. Let's talk about some of those standout performances then. I mean, everyone knows Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals, but were there any other stories that, really challenged the Nazi narrative?
Absolutely. Germany actually had a very successful Olympics, especially in the equestrian events. They dominated, winning both individual and team gold in all 3 disciplines: dressage, eventing, and show jumping.
Well, that makes sense, I guess, considering, how deeply horsemanship is ingrained in German culture. But I bet not all of their wins were controversy-free, were they?
You're right about that. Take Tony Merkens, for instance. He was a German cyclist who won gold in the sprint, but there were accusations that he actually fouled his opponent, the Dutch cyclist, Arie van Vliet, in the final.
Oh, so was he disqualified then?
Nope. He was only fined 100 Reichsmark, believe it or not, and he got to keep his gold medal.
That's pretty lenient, considering how, I don't know, obsessed the Nazis were with winning and portraying this, image of superiority.
It does raise some eyebrows, that's for sure. Some people think they just didn't want to tarnish their victory by disqualifying a German athlete.
Yeah, that's definitely a decision that sparked some debate. But let's move on to some other remarkable performances. Were there any that really stand out to you?
Oh, plenty. We had the American gymnast, Alfred Schwartzman. He took home 3 gold medals. And then there's this unbelievable story of Qadra El-Touni, the Egyptian weightlifter.
El-Touni. Yeah, that name rings a bell. Tell me more.
He was a middleweight, and he completely blew away the competition. I mean, after winning his weight class, he just kept lifting for another 45 minutes. He ended up lifting a total of 387.5 kilograms. That's 35 kilograms more than the German who won silver.
Whoa. What was the reaction to that?
People were just stunned. Even Hitler, I bet. I mean, El-Touni he shattered both the Olympic and world records. It was such a display of strength and endurance that even the Nazis couldn't deny it.
I bet he was so incredibly proud, representing his country on such a grand stage and achieving such a huge victory.
Absolutely. His story, like so many from these games, just reminds us that the pursuit of excellence, that power of the human spirit, it can transcend all the political turmoil.
And speaking of athletic excellence, how could we forget about the U.S. rowing team?
Ah, yes. That 8-man crew from the University of Washington. They had this incredible come-from-behind victory against the Germans. And remember, this was with Hitler watching from the stands.
What a moment. Knowing, the symbolic importance of that race, the atmosphere must have been electric.
You can bet it was. And that American victory, just like Jesse Owens' wins on the track, it served as this, well, the symbolic blow to the Nazi narrative.
It seems like despite their best efforts to, control the story, the spirit of the competition, and just the sheer diversity of talent, it just shone through.
You said it. In a lot of ways, the Olympics became this kind of a microcosm of all those brewing global tensions and ideological clashes that, well, that eventually led to World War II.
That's a pretty sobering thought. But before we dive into the legacy of the 1936 Olympics, maybe we can uncover a few more of those incredible human stories, right?
Absolutely. Remember, the 36 Games marked a lot of firsts. And one of them involved a woman winning a gold medal in track and field after surviving a plane crash.
Wait, are we talking about Betty Robinson again? I mean, her story's already amazing.
No, this is a different athlete. But her story's just as remarkable. Her name was Helen Stevens, and she won gold in the 100-meter sprint, setting a new world record in the process.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What happened with the plane crash?
Well, it happened back in 1930. Helen was only 17 at the time. She was a passenger on this small plane that, well, it crashed during a storm. She was thrown from the wreckage, but get this, she survived with only minor injuries.
That's incredible. Almost like fate had something special in store for her.
Yeah. It's hard not to think that way, yeah. Especially considering all her athletic achievements. But here's the thing. After her victory in Berlin, she was accused of being a man.
What? Seriously? That's crazy.
No, right? The accusations were based on, her muscular physique and, well, her incredible speed.
So how did she respond to that? Those ridiculous allegations?
She denied them, of course, vehemently. And she even agreed to undergo a physical examination to prove her gender.
And what was the outcome?
The results confirmed that, yes, she was indeed a woman. Put an end to all that controversy.
Good for her. It's just sad that her incredible achievements were kind of overshadowed by such baseless accusations.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also inspiring, I guess, to see how she stood up for herself and just refused to let those accusations define her.
You're absolutely right. Her story says a lot about her strength and resilience, both on and off the field.
And speaking of defying expectations, the 1936 Olympics also saw the first ever basketball competition.
That's right. Basketball was still a relatively new sport back then, but it was gaining in popularity, and its inclusion in the Olympics was definitely a sign of its growing international appeal.
So, who took home the gold in that first basketball tournament?
The United States. They beat Canada in the final. The games were actually played outdoors, believe it or not, on this converted tennis court. And the conditions were, well, far from ideal.
I can imagine. Playing basketball outdoors on a tennis court.
Yeah.
That must have been quite the challenge.
Oh, it was. But, it was a testament to the athletes' adaptability and their determination. And speaking of adaptability, the 36 Games also saw the introduction of another new event. Canoeing.
Canoeing. I never knew that was a relatively recent addition to the Olympics.
It was, and Germany dominated those canoeing events, won gold in all 4 disciplines.
Well, I guess that makes sense, considering, their strong tradition of water sports.
It does, but, beyond all the individual events and the sporting achievements, it's also important to remember the bigger picture, I think, like the social and cultural context of those games.
That's a good point. We can't forget that all this was taking place against this backdrop of rising nationalism, political extremism, and those escalating tensions that eventually led to another world war.
Exactly. And while the Nazis were trying to use the Olympics to showcase their ideology and promote this sense of unity and strength, the games also kind of revealed those deep divisions and anxieties that were brewing under the surface.
So in many ways, the 36 Berlin Olympics served as this microcosm of, I guess, the complex and turbulent times in which they were held.
Precisely. They were a stage for athletic excellence and political maneuvering, a testament to human potential and, well, also a stark reminder of how fragile peace really is.
This has been a fascinating exploration so far, I have to say, uncovering all these layers of history and the human drama, stuff I never knew existed.
It has been. And, we still have more to unearth. In the final part of our deep dive, we'll look at the lasting legacy of the 1936 Berlin Olympics and how they continue to shape our understanding of, well, that complicated relationship between sports and politics.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? Through, well, the heart of the 1936 Berlin Olympics. We've seen the triumphs and the turmoil all playing out on that, world stage. We've talked about how the Nazi regime tried to use the games for propaganda, only to be challenged by, well, those incredible achievements of athletes like Jesse Owens and others. But now I'm thinking about the ripples, the lasting impact. What
Yeah.
impact did those games have on the Olympic movement itself and how we view the whole intersection of sports and politics today?
You've hit on a really, really crucial point. I think the 1936 Berlin Olympics, they often serve as this stark turning point, a reminder that no sporting event can truly escape those political realities.
Yeah. I mean, the Nazi regime's blatant manipulation of the games, all that propaganda, it definitely cast a long shadow, didn't it, over the whole Olympic movement?
It did. And, after World War II, there was this renewed commitment to safeguarding those Olympic ideals, right? And to
Bruce.
try to prevent, well, future exploitation like that.
So were there any, I don't know, concrete changes that were made as a result of that whole 1936 experience?
Yeah, the IOC, they took some steps to strengthen their rules and regulations, trying to, better protect athletes from discrimination and, well, political manipulation. But the issue of boycotts, that's maybe the most enduring legacy of those games. I mean, those debates, they continue even to this day.
They do, don't they? We've seen boycotts over apartheid in South Africa, the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, and, I mean, countless other political conflicts. That decision to boycott, it's so complex.
It really is. There are valid arguments on both sides. Some feel boycotts they're essential to apply pressure on these, oppressive regimes, while others argue that punishing athletes and disrupting that unifying spirit of the games, it's counterproductive.
So the delicate balance, isn't it?
Mhm.
Trying to, I guess, weigh the potential impact of a boycott against the desire to preserve the spirit of the Olympics, the integrity of the games.
Exactly. And each situation, it has its own unique challenges to consider. But one thing's for sure, the 1936 Olympics forced the world to confront that uncomfortable reality that sports and politics, they're inherently intertwined.
Yeah, and that awareness has really shaped how we approach the Olympics now and all those other international sporting events. But beyond the political fallout, what other, enduring marks did those games leave behind?
Well, we talked about this before, but the torch relay, which is now this iconic symbol of the Olympics, that was actually introduced at the 1936 Berlin Games. Kind of ironic, isn't it? A regime known for its propaganda, they accidentally created one of the most potent symbols of global unity.
It has evolved into that, hasn't it? This
Mhm.
powerful representation of the Olympic spirit. It's a testament to the idea that even in the darkest moments, something positive and enduring can come out of it.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about, the advancements in sports broadcasting and filmmaking. Those games were the first to be televised. And Leni Riefenstahl's film, Olympia, that film just revolutionized sports cinematography. The techniques she used are still widely used today.
It's kind of fascinating how such a groundbreaking film came out of such a controversial event.
Riefenstahl's story, like so many others from that era, it's a study in contrasts. I mean, brilliance intertwined with this dark chapter in history. It's a reminder, I think, of the complex legacy of the games themselves.
So as we wrap up our deep dive here, what stands out to you most about, well, the 1936 Berlin Olympics?
For me, it's the resilience and courage of all those athletes who competed. I mean, they faced such adversity. But despite all that, the political pressures, the weight of history, they rose to the occasion. They embodied the very best of human potential, I think.
I agree. And even amidst all that global turmoil, it's inspiring to see those moments of grace, of sportsmanship, of human connection, just shining through.
The 1936 Berlin Olympics were definitely a product of their time. They reflect both the triumphs and the tragedies of that era, but I think they offer some valuable lessons for us today as well.
They do. They challenge us to be, I guess, more vigilant about how sports and politics intersect, to champion diversity and inclusion, and to never, ever underestimate the power of the human spirit.
If you're intrigued by any of this that we've talked about today, I encourage you to delve deeper into the 1936 Berlin Olympics. There are so many books, documentaries, articles, all exploring those stories, those legacies in much greater detail.
Who knows? Maybe your exploration will even uncover some insights, some perspectives that we haven't even touched on today. This is just the beginning. Until next time, keep diving deep and never stop questioning the world around you.
Keep exploring.
This has been The Deep Dive.